Welcome to my brand new Diabolical podcast. I believe this will be our third episode ever. And with me today is my friend Colin Moriarty. We both kind of have villainish names.
Yeah, we do. I love your name, though. I love, it's just, to the point, you know? Mine takes a little too long to get there, so.
Yeah, you have quite a few more syllables than me.
Definitely.
But, Moriarty, that's a great sort of classic Sherlock Holmes villain. Kain, I don't know. I think I prefer the vampire to the biblical one, but they're always villains. So
yeah, I was thinking, too, Final Fantasy IV, kind of this.
Oh, yeah.
The sometimes hero, sometimes villain, best friend of the protagonist. So
yeah, it's a good
name.
A hot minute.
Yeah, everyone. There's just only one reference to my name, and it's that. You can really play around with yours.
Although now
Fallout 3, I'm named out. There's a character named Colin Moriarty in Fallout 3 as well.
Is there?
Yeah, there is. Although he's like the bartender at, in Megaton or whatever. And
okay,
it's just a coincidence, but
that's a hell of a coincidence.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I'm sorry if your audience is watching. I'm wiping my face down. I just got out of the shower and ran over here, so didn't give myself enough time to cool off, I guess.
And you're in Virginia.
I am in Virginia. Yeah, Central Virginia.
It's humid there. Right?
Yeah, and we have AC, but at the same time we always have our door open so our dog can get in and out. So I don't feel like it's ever really quite as cool as I'd like it to be. Also, my girlfriend likes it a little warmer, so I don't want to blast her out of here either.
Yeah, that's tricky. I feel like girlfriends generally do like it warmer. I always want it colder. It's dry here. It's really freaking dry. We've got a 24,000 acre fire creeping towards town right now. There's half the town's on evacuation notice, so it's exciting times. We'll take some humidity.
Yeah, that's scary. I mean, down here it's just gross.
Yeah.
I go outside just to bring the garbage can in, and I'm like, oh my god, you're dying. It's horrifying. I don't know if I'm used to it either, but I don't think I am. So it's also people are immune to it.
You were in LA, right?
Yeah, I was in LA for 3 years, and then San Francisco for 10 years before that. And then, so before that, I was out east. So,
boy, of those three areas, San Francisco has really nice climate, I have to say.
Oh, yeah, it's perfect. Sweatshirt weather.
I love it.
Sweatshirt weather is what I always say. It's perfect. Gets a little hot in September, and no one has AC there either. But it's usually, I love overcast skies. I like Seattle a lot too. For that,
we just booked a flight to Seattle actually just before this podcast started. We had some credits from COVID times, and we're like, where should we go? We should go somewhere in Seattle. It sounded cool.
Yeah, Seattle's awesome. It's it's beautiful in the sense that it's like this kind of alpine thing with pine trees.
Right.
It doesn't snow, but it sometimes does. But just pine trees and very rainy and overcast, beautiful mountains, Mount Rainier, and all that stuff. It's highly recommended. Great city.
Yeah, I lived in Seattle when I was 2 years old, so I've been there a few times as a kid since then, but I've never really gone to Seattle since I've grown up and have my own freedom and money and all that. So it seems like a pretty cool spot to explore, and just like Washington in general.
Definitely.
And it's green. It's green and wet, and I'm sick of dry and brown. So
yeah, it's the antithesis of where you are right now. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, we have a lot of forest here, but it's just so dry. So yeah, well, thanks for being on. I know you've got a massive, huge, successful podcast and whole thing going. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Colin's Last Stand and the whole project you're doing. But I thought maybe before that we could kind of rewind, talk about how you got into game journalism and kind of your origin story a bit.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I was born in 1984, and my brother Dagan, who a lot of my audience knows because we do a show together, he's 11 years older than me, and he's the oldest of the four of us, and I have two sisters, and then it's me. So I grew up really into very nerdy things from a very early age. My brother is like a proto-nerd in a lot of ways. He was going into Chinatown in the late 80s and buying undubbed anime and going and buying import games and playing Neo Geo and TurboGrafx, just really random shit he and his friends were into. And I really just took to it as a kid, and I have really great memories of that. And part of that was the gaming magazine vibe, and especially the strategy guide thing. I really loved strategy guides as a kid. And the Dragon Warrior games on NES, people might remember, came with like all of these pamphlets and like maps, and you would like fold them out, and it would show you all the enemy stats and stuff. And my friends would play the game, or my brother would play the game, because I was kind of, I was like 6 or 7. I didn't really understand it, but I was like really obsessive over these different stats and all this, and it just really, I think, burrowed into my brain, something that I wanted to do. And I guess like the advent of the internet, and I got on the internet in '96, I guess. That I was immediately involved with gaming stuff, like wherever we could do it. And people might remember PlayStation Magazine used to have these like like you could put an ad in for yourself, like, I'm into this kind of game, here's my email address, email me if you're interested in this. And it's like this kind of pen pal thing. And then they'd also have like this storefront kind of thing where you can buy and sell stuff. And I started meeting people through that, like in 1996, 1997, and trading games. And then before you knew it, you found your way to like IRC and all these early fan sites and GameFAQs. And GameFAQs is really where like I became known for something. And that was in high school, and that was a really cool thing. And I just did it for fun, and really took I used to write strategy guides in my notebook, or write them on my computer in my room and upload them. And IGN just happened to have found my work and liked it. It was really just a very lucky thing. There was many of us that were doing this. So really good timing on my part. So that's really how it began.
Yeah, nice. Luck is such a huge part of every success story, I feel like there's some moment when some serendipitous thing happens, and you're just like, okay, if that hadn't happened, like where could my whole life have gone? I mean, luck and hard work and all that's like a concoction of different.
Yeah, luck is essential. I mean, I always say that you can like do a bunch of things to control the outcome, and you can do a bunch of things to not control the outcome. Like, or there are a bunch of, I guess, factors that you can't control. So you can control the work you put in. You can control like leaving it all on the field, or putting in maximum effort, or studying really hard, or investing the proper amount of money, or whatever it is. But you can't really manipulate like the astrological ether. And so, you know what I mean? Like, so there's
Not
only
yet.
so much you can do. Yeah, exactly. And like, so I just look at it as a dice roll, and you can kind of weight your dice, but you can't totally control the way it comes out.
Yeah, for better or worse, I suppose.
Definitely.
Man, strategy guides, that's an interesting topic. I remember my first strategy guide for any game was for Might and Magic 2. Back on, God, it was just like we had an old like Mac. And that game had so much depth to it, and you really couldn't play that. You really couldn't get through it without a guide, because there was just so much going on. It kind of, yeah. I guess I never got into strategy guides too much, but for that game, I think I read it, front to back multiple times.
Yeah, it speaks to a certain kind of person. Like, I knew people, my friend Corey growing up, like he would buy strategy guides for every game, because he just liked to, like, I remember him having like all the PS1 RPGs, and even like obscure N64 games like Quest 64 and all that. He would buy the strategy guides for him, and he just enjoyed like completing everything. And I guess I got into the other side of that, which was like, can I contribute in some way to this, because it's really cool and it's fun for me. And then it became not fun later on when you do it for a living and stuff, but it took many years to get to the point of breaking. And I didn't break until 2010 or something like that, when I was like, I can't do this anymore. But yeah, so that was the way I got in, and it was a very lucky thing, and I'm very fortunate for that experience. A lot of great writers wrote right alongside me that just went and did normal jobs later on. So
yeah. Well, roll the luck. So guides, and then to IGN. And how long were you at IGN for?
I wrote for them from 2002 to 2014, and I was full time from 2007 to 2014. So, okay. And I was an intern twice and all that before that. So, I was associated with them for a long time, and 12 years, I guess. And it was a really great thing. I loved it. It was awesome.
Yeah. And then you went on and you did Kind of Funny.
Yep, we founded Kind of Funny. We technically founded what would become Kind of Funny, I guess, in 2012, but we spun out our Patreon in 2014, and then we started what is now really Kind of Funny, which is January 5th, 2015. And yeah, I did that for like 2 years and change. And then in 2017, I left that, and I started what I'm doing now, basically.
So what was the impetus to break off and do Kind of Funny?
I don't think we were really that... Well, it's a few things. I don't think we were very happy doing what we were doing anymore. I do think we were completely underappreciated. I can't speak so much for the other guys. I guess I'll let them speak for themselves. But I totally was underpaid and underappreciated. I was making like $70-something thousand, which is for what I was pulling in at IGN traffic wise and stuff, a complete joke. And, I really should have gotten paid honestly, double what I was getting paid. And, I didn't really ask for more. I just was like, they offered me a lot more. They offered me a promotion, editor at large, which is what I always wanted. They finally relented, but it just was too late. And I really appreciate all of them over there. Really nice people. Per Schneider is an amazing person, and others that I worked with. Most of them are not there anymore. But Damon Hatfield, of course, Ryan McCaffrey, really great dudes. But for us, we just kind of realized that we thought that maybe the site needed us more than we needed the site, and that people would come along with us. And I actually really remember a few pertinent things at IGN early in my career when I was like an intern and just a freelancer, where they were really quite convinced no one cared about who wrote what. That was pretty much prevailing wisdom. And I thought they were dead wrong. I thought they were wrong from the very beginning. I remember thinking that's totally not true. And they realized it later, of course, but we kind of proved the rule. And you can see, Podcast Beyond continues without us, for instance, 5 years later or 6 years later, but it's not the same show, kind of like a Tonight Show sort of thing. So I think it was just kind of a time for us to move on. And I remember people were most skeptical internally about me leaving because I was so long associated with the site, and I also was the one that seemed to have been less or least likely to succeed, I guess, or be catered towards in a influencer world or whatever you want to call it. But obviously that ended up not being true either. So
why do you think that was?
Well, I think out of the four of us, Nick, Tim, Greg, and I, they were on the video side explicitly on IGN. I was the senior editor of the editorial side, so I was the guy really dealing with the games themselves and writing a lot. And we did Podcast Beyond every week, and we did a bunch of videos. I made a few video series there and stuff, but I think people just thought Colin is inherently a writer. And I think people totally underrated what I brought to the kind of alchemy of Podcast Beyond and IGN PlayStation and stuff like that as well, which I think bore fruit later. So I think people were just kind of skeptical about that. I remember having a conversation with a higher up at IGN, just being like, yeah, I don't think you're making the right choice here, kind of. And I appreciated that because I don't think they were saying it in a mean way or anything like that, but it just, it ended up being different. And I think I kind of just saw that, things were changing. Things were becoming more personality driven. And we were really the first proving ground on Patreon of that this could really work. And, for a corporation, for a company. And so I'm proud of that. I'm proud to have been associated with that. Yeah. Yeah,
no, it's taking a risk and getting out and trying something new. I think that now, I certainly, feel like I should rewind and have started something similar years ago because, of course, if you rely too much on the good graces of a website and the powers that be, it's never a safe bet. But Forbes has been, it's basically been like being a YouTuber or something in terms of you just rolling in huge traffic year after year. And then when they put up a paywall and screw up the SEO and everything falls through the floor, it's like, oh crap. Okay. I guess it's time to do something else.
Right.
But yeah, I know. And it's the same sort of situation. I don't know how many hundreds of millions of hits I've brought to Forbes, but, it's probably not in keeping with the amount I've been paid.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Is I kind of think, just to say real quick, I think us leaving, Greg and I were the first real, what you would call, I guess, big website talent to have left their jobs, just to have left and gone and done independent work. And I think it kind of scared a lot of management at a lot of websites and entities straight. I know that people are treated a lot better at websites now. I know that they're when I hear what people are making now, I'm like, you're welcome, dude, because yeah. No one was making that when, or just a few of us were making anything like that. And also, I just feel like I think it showed people you can do it. If you really feel like you believe, that's why I always make fun of Kotaku and other sites, because no offense to them. I'm not trying to be it is personal inherently, but I'm not trying to be super rude, but some of these guys have written there for years and no one gives a fuck about them. And you make fun of, or the Royal You makes fun of them about that, but it's almost unthinkable. It's how do you write for Kotaku and have 4,000 Twitter followers? If I was writing on Kotaku, man, people would be clicking those things left and right. It's almost like people don't have any idea what they're supposed to do. It's almost, it's actually kind of funny to watch that happen, where so you see these large entities that are just lumbering along, and the future is in the independent, It just is. unless you're scraping SEO or writing wikis and strategy guides or things people are searching for, it sucks to put all that work in for someone else. And I think eventually we just realize that we should just do it for ourselves. And then I realized that again, that it's better to work for yourself, or at least try to. And it's what we said earlier. It's, again, just trying to weight the dice. It wasn't necessarily going to work, but it did. And I think it's all because we brought something special and something unique. And I don't know that it would even work today. I have no idea.
Right.
Again, time.
Well, and the landscape's changed so much since then. YouTube and YouTubers, that whole influencer segment has just grown enormously. Games journalism continues to shrink. And I think you're right. I mean, I think one thing about like Kotaku or some of these sites is you don't know who's writing the post because they all have the same take over and over again. It's
they're
just the same voice.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, is there any sort of like dissident take at Kotaku? It's. No. I mean, maybe once in a while, but or any Polygon.
Dude, I don't know.
Kotaku.
I don't know what I have ever read. They don't. That site sucks, and it's just. I don't understand how you can be given a platform. Like you're given a built-in platform. Like I didn't build IGN. I'm not amongst the first popular editors there. But when you are given a platform, God Almighty, do something with it. It's pathetic. Right. That's my whole take is. If I were on Kotaku, I would have people clicking my stories, and people would be interested in reading them and stuff. And how do you just take like Ethan or someone over there that's been writing there for so long? It's like, how does no one care about you still? How have you written nothing that anyone cares about in that time, man? You are wasting. You are squandering this opportunity. Even if it was someone else that had your same views, at least give it to someone more talented that knows what to do with it. That's the thing I'm sad about with games journalism kind of folding is. It benefits people like you and me that are in the independent sphere. I mean, it's great. I don't care if these sites go away, but it bums me out for people that that want to get in or want to do useful journalistic type work, and you have a bunch of flunkies basically filling whatever roles are left, and that's I think the most unfortunate part. And then they hire themselves, and I was talking about this on another show. I think it was on Jaffe's show, David Jaffe, where IGN was started in the mid-'90s as N64.com, etc. I'm probably one of the 5 biggest editors to have ever written there. And I feel like people shouldn't underestimate why that is. It's not because I'm like the world's best writer. I think I'm a good writer, but it's not like I have the world's most deep and amazing gaming takes. It's that I just say different things. Right. And I'm not even doing it intentionally. I'm literally just talking about the way I feel, and for some reason, no one realizes. If I were at one of these sites, I'd be looking for people like me, people like you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because I think that would bring in like a nice little cacophony and a little bit of a different op-ed page style thing. That's the disappointing thing. It's just where is the talent? Where I worked with so many great people. Where are I know literally they're gone, but where are these types of people? Where are the Fran Mirabellas? The Hillary Goldsteins, the Eric Brudvigs and the David Claymans, like the great writers of the past that seem to care and have fun and enjoy and not hate their audience and all that. It's a bummer. And
that is a weird thing, isn't it? To hate,
so anyway, I'm on a diatribe.
No, diatribes are good. I like diatribes. One of the best pieces of writing advice I've seen for like writers trying to get into business is just to be weird, like have your own voice, because there's so much of the same voice. In games journalism, but in the media, really more broadly, it's just the same voice, the same story, the same. I mean, God, anything that happens that's even remotely controversial, there's a dozen, think pieces or takes, and they're all the same. It's just an echo chamber, and I mean, why would anybody remember any of these writers? And then there is that built-in like antagonism towards the readership. We saw that in 2014 really blow up, I think, and it's just continued and gotten worse in a lot of ways. And I think that the strategy for so many writers now is just to say the right things so that the right people agree with you, even if you're just being boring as fuck.
Definitely, it's cowardly, not in the sense that it's like lockstepping, in the case of some of these people, goose stepping right along. It's more than that. It's that, like, again, they're squandering this opportunity to be honest. And I hear from people behind the scenes all the time. There are a lot of people in high positions in the gaming industry that I speak with that hate these motherfuckers. And I'm just polite enough. First of all, they're my friends or they're my contacts, and I'm not going to blow them up. That's never the way I've conducted my journalism or my work in the industry. I don't really consider myself a journalist anymore. But also, it does bum me out sometimes because I almost want to be like, you know what? Like, fuck this. Fight your own battle. Why do I always have to, like, why do people like me always have to take it on the chin saying the conventional wisdom that people want to hear or they don't want to hear, but they certainly come to listen to? And I agree with you. If I were the editor, sometimes in a weird way, fantasize about being the editor-in-chief of IGN just because it's like, what would I do to this site? And the reality is that I would probably fire half the site. I would obviously like look into everything. It wouldn't be like this indiscriminate thing, but it's like, who has a unique voice? Who has something to say? Who knows anything about video games? Who wants to speak to people with care? It's not even with respect, but like have care for the subject matter. Have some sort of insight into how it's made or the troubles and tribulations that it goes through, but don't make assumptions that every game is made under the same circumstances. There's just a lot of ignorance. There's a lot of people that's clearly, this has been a kind of a point of contention, although I think an interesting one. Like a lot of people circulating the notion that it's like some of these people don't seem to play games. I mean, if you look at their achievements and their trophies, I mean, you can look at my trophies all day. I mean, I play more games than fucking anyone, that I know in my life. I'm sure not anyone out there, but certainly in my own circle. So I just feel like it's you got to live it. You got to care about it. You shouldn't feel like you have to walk into something and you get to just mold it into your own thing and ridicule the audience and debase development and all the rest, and really in a really destructive way. It sucks.
Right.
It sucks because I don't think most people want to be treated like this, but I also don't think most people think this about other people too. I think that most people just want to get along with each other, want to enjoy a common hobby and have like reasonable debate about it. The whole meme of like, these guys don't want politics in games. And so it's like, I've never said that personally. I just want to hear something different. I want to hear someone, why is, GameBite or whatever, which is owned by Tencent, writing about the Palestinian conflict, but they're certainly quiet about the concentration camps in China. It's like just, they're certainly quiet about Bin Salman owning SNK. I mean, I don't see any. So it's just, there's just a lot of nonsense going on out there. And I just wish, I feel like we almost have to rewind to square one and like figure out like, what does it mean to be a games journalist? What does it mean to write about games and care about games and be in the media? And I feel like, unfortunately, what it means is that the old ways got to go. And I think the only sites that are going to survive are the ones that have legacy. Like, I think IGN and GameSpot will be fine and everything like that. But I think otherwise, people like you and me and in our sphere, Substack, I'm a huge fan of Substack. I know you're on there. Like, this is eating everyone's lunch, and it's awesome to watch because it's just the way it is. It's just the market. If you have a problem with it, then take my audience back.
Yeah, right.
And exactly. I don't feel like with the resources these guys have, it would be that hard.
No.
Yeah, but
no, yeah, it's so much squandered potential and resources for sure. And it's funny to watch people in the media, and not just in the games media, but the broader media, freak out about Substack because because they're worried, because now there are these independent voices that aren't just saying what the mainstream media is always saying. And I think for a long time there's been a growing sort of the growing progressive woke side of the mainstream media has been getting stronger and more powerful, and then you have the sort of explicitly right-wing media, but you don't have a lot of voices in between there. And Substack, I think, has given and similar sites have given writers who have independent thought and independent ideas more of a voice and more of an ability to be heard. And,
it's awesome.
So
and I think
people like.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Please. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, people like Andrew Sullivan and Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi and all these guys who are getting onto Substack and doing great work. And I think it's freaking people out, which is hilarious to me. It's similar to the people being freaked out by YouTube when YouTube started getting a lot of the clicks that were going to gaming websites. If you're not challenged, if these sites aren't challenged and forced to change and forced to grow, then they're going to die. And I can't even feel bad about that.
No, I feel the same way, and I wanted to shout out Substack as well because I feel like it solves this problem that Patreon and others weren't able to solve, which is like we needed a place for writing a place where like writing can really natively live. I know that there are writers and novelists and stuff that do Patreon, and I've met some of them in the past, but it's really mostly for podcasts and art and like all sorts of weird shit, like RSS feed style stuff. And I love Substack coming in because I'm a reader of content. Like there are podcasts I listen to. I listen to lots of political podcasts and some sports podcasts, no gaming stuff, but I'm a reader of content. So I really feel like that. You mentioned 3 writers who I love. And, I would also give a shout out to others like Barry Weiss and others that are doing a really nice job on there. And some people in the gaming sphere like you getting involved in there, I think is good because then it starts to create like a bunch of like concentric circles with, little Venn diagrams everywhere where everyone kind of interconnects. And the thing that people don't get, Eric, and I know you get it, is people think that this isn't sustainable. But what they don't understand is that the economics of this is totally different than the economics of what they're used to. It's unthinkable that a website could not survive on 12,400 people coming in, and right. But my company is wildly profitable on 12,400 people paying subscribers, and you wouldn't find 12,400 people that would pay for IGN, for instance, right? Oh, no, and that's a problem for them. So they have to go and it's no insult to them. It's the nature of websites. I don't fucking pay for websites, really. So they have to rely on other things, SEO. They have to, good social media, whatever the case might be, to make their economics of scale work. But our economics don't have to work like that. They never have to work like that. I never have to reach 100,000 people. I never have to reach, even though I do, 50,000 people, right? Like, and that's beautiful. And people will pay for it. And so when you see like a Glenn Greenwald, Glenn Greenwald left The Intercept and he's never going to be published in a major paper again, but he doesn't need to be. No, and even if he only has 5,000 people paying $5 a month to read his stuff, and I'm sure he has much more than that, it's $25,000 a month. Yeah. So no gaming website's paying that to anyone, even though they should be. So that's my whole thing is like, it almost feels like 2 Achilles heels. Like, they're getting sliced on both of them because it's like the quality of the content and also like just the economic sustainability of it. As long as you have a core of people that are willing to pay for the content and you treat them with respect, not with what you're saying, they're not always going to hear what they want to hear. I lose people all the time because they don't want to hear what they want to hear, but because you're consistent, you're quality oriented, you respect them and all of the rest. And I just think it's so obvious. It's so frustrating to me that these big entities can't figure it out because it's so obvious. And there are a few. Spotify, I would say, is one of the big entities that understands exactly what it needs to do. But I don't see many others making plays for, like Spotify just took someone from Barstool. I mean, that's crazy for, like a podcast for like $60 million.
Oh, damn.
And they paid Rogan $100 million, obviously. I like seeing some company get it, but it's obviously just one example of like YouTube doesn't even seem to get it. It's always the joke, right? Huge. The meme about them, like, Will Smith's on YouTube. It's like, who gives a shit? No one goes to YouTube for Will Smith. You don't even understand your own platform.
It's that's another one of these things is the bad management, and that's widespread throughout the media business. I would say. So you've got more than 2. You've got these ideological issues that have cropped up. You have bad management. You have a lot of sort of, I think, old school, newspaper people or magazine people who don't know how to adapt, still don't know how to adapt to the current realities of media, which, as you said, it has a lot to do with personality. It really does have a lot to do with people following people that they, like at Forbes. I've been there for 10 years as a contributor, and there's still no follower system. You can't just sign up to get posts from one person that you want to read. It's crazy to me. Like, why? What's going on? Why don't we have, the most basic element of getting, loyal readers to be able to follow their chosen writers directly on, it just seems like that would be a no-brainer. But, across the whole, and, Forbes, when I first started there, they adopted a whole new model of publishing, when the contributor model, and they brought that over from True Slant, which is where I was at before. And that was pretty innovative and forward-thinking in a lot of ways. I mean, they were paying a lot of people to write, which is great. I think it's great to see people paid to write, and you could be very successful if you knew what you were doing. But, and the sky was the limit in terms of earnings. It was very much like, you can go and make a lot of money doing this writing business if you can publish content that people want to read and you can get out there. But even then, it's still that reliance on SEO, that reliance on the whims of Google, man. Like that's what's hit me this year is Google has just disappeared.
I talked to Nick Calandra about that, who's the EIC of the Escapists, and he was saying when he founded Only SP or whatever, that site was basically murdered because Google just randomly changed something. Like it went from like something to nothing because of that. And that's the point is, and you get it, is you just have to go to the source. Like you have to find your people and figure out a way to make that work. And the kind of mutual loyalty that you build with an audience like that. Like I have a ride or die group of people that are with me because they know that I think that I'm real, and I think there are a lot of people like me out there, which is awesome. I think whether you like these people or not, people like Jim Sterling and Giant Bomb and all, I mean, these are very similar people in this respect, except for their politics are different. So it goes all ways. But I was looking for this quote and I found it. My friend Michael Malice, who I don't know if you know him, but he's a podcast, pretty famous podcaster and political thinker and an anarchist, basically. He said this on Twitter a few days ago, and I retweeted it. Low-quality people compete for in-group status simply by being consistently and reliably obedient. There's little else for them to offer. And it's kind of what you're saying. It's the exact thing. And I say it over and over again, and it sounds kind of ridiculous, but it's like they're fucking up so badly that it's just to people's benefit to even just realize it. Like just even having eyes open enough to see outside of your little horse blinders what is actually happening around you. It's so sad. It's like watching a very slow sinking ship where no one seems to have any urgency to get off the ship. And
well, no, they have urgency to circle the wagons and to block and to dogpile people on Twitter and, to bully and to, complain about harassment while harassing people. It's, it's been, I kind of I tell you, after Gamergate and whatnot, I just kind of got out of the whole politics thing for a while because I just felt burnt out. It was just a lot. And getting back in, with my Substack lately and actually taking people to task for some of this crazy nonsense, like the 6 days in Fallujah bullshit. It's just amazing how cowardly and how dishonest a lot of these people are. They don't argue in good faith. They rely on basically lies and on a mob to not even to make arguments, just to try to shout down anyone or block anyone who has a dissenting opinion, and then to toss around slurs and slander and all that. And it's not a good look. I don't think it's sustainable. This entire approach to actually having some kind of healthy civic debate, even if it's about a video game. Because it's not just a video game. When you're talking about something like 6 Days in Fallujah, you're also talking about history and free speech and the role of art in society and the role of government in society and the role of government when it comes to art. But nobody actually wants to engage in these ideas. It just feels like, I swear to God, ever since I got into writing about video games, I feel like there's such a resistance to actual discussion. I don't know, years ago when I posted the link to an emulator and got just completely smashed by the gaming press and Ben Kuchera and all these guys, I was just like, what the hell is this horrible place?
Yeah, these guys are also, they're full of shit. A lot of these places use emulators to capture their footage of older games. So they're also full of shit. I mean, I can tell you for sure that was happening at IGN. So, then they post about that shit. I mean, I remember Kuchera had literally a couple of years later posted about, what emulators to use for this and that. And I'm just like, what?
Oh,
he's one of the worst, man. It's like, I don't even see his name pop up anymore. So I don't even know if he's around, but why? It's not really a huge surprise because people are lamenting what's happening in, like you had mentioned earlier, kind of just political newsrooms. There's an older group of people that are getting eaten alive, and they don't know what to do with the younger group. And I hear from those older people in our sphere at these various sites, like what was going on, for instance, with Palestine and IGN. Like I know a lot of people at IGN. I was talking to people behind the scenes. I know exactly what happened, and management smacked them down, pretty hard and pretty publicly and embarrassingly. Whether or not you agree with that or not, it showed where the power imbalance is, where the power imbalance wasn't quite like that when I was there. And so I think they're also losing grasp of they're throwing themselves around like they can't be replaced. And unfortunately, when you don't have a voice and you're an automaton, like a fucking battle droid coming out of a ship, the open gape mouth of a ship, then you're just replaceable.
Right.
It's like a Ford car coming off of an assembly line. It's not like so. That's the ironic part about it, is you would think like I don't know, man. I really want one of these sites to be bold enough to just start hiring some counterculture people just to see if it could save them.
Yeah.
And I don't think they will, because I was saying, like, I don't, hire a person like me. I'm not even sure that I'm far enough to what I'm even talking about. I would love to see people that are like straight up Trump voters and evangelical Christians and all this. And so, I don't know I don't even know what the fuck they have to say about games, because they don't have a platform in which to say it. So it's just, I want that too, but it is sad.
Yeah, no,
I do feel like we used to have it and we don't so much anymore. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I don't know if we've ever had a real strong, I mean, like maybe Christian conservative game writers. I've never encountered one, I don't think, like in any sort of prominent role. But yeah, diversity of opinions, diversity of backgrounds. My politics are eclectic, I guess, but I would love to see more, just for the debate aspect of it, just because it's more interesting when you can debate with people rather than just always agree with them. Like it's good for your brain. It's good to have different takes. It's good to disagree on things. I love it when I have readers who are like, I don't agree with you about this, but they actually bring up points to argue instead of just calling me a fascist or a commie or something, and I would love to see more of that. I mean, that's one thing that I have enjoyed at Forbes, is that we have, been able to have some sort of debate within the site. And, but at a lot of places it's like, and then readers are conditioned in a bad way also. Sometimes I'll see like a forum post where there'll be a screenshot of one article and a screenshot of another article, and they're saying two different things. And they're like, look at these hypocrites, look at them. And it's like, they're two different authors. Like, this is a good thing. We want this. We want disagreeing headlines at the same publication.
I agree with that.
And I think I think readers are conditioned to think that if it's Kotaku, they're all going to say the same thing, because they do all say the same thing. But now if we had a Kotaku, a theoretical, multiverse version of Kotaku, where there were radically different ideas and voices, that would be so much more interesting and fulfilling, both for the writers and the readers. And I think that more and more over the last decade, I've seen a move towards lockstep, towards, I feel like it's really bizarre. I do think that I probably couldn't get hired at most major gaming outlets because of this sort of things that I've written about. But my actual controversial takes are like, we shouldn't censor video games, and we shouldn't. Like with Israel-Palestine, my really controversial take was, this is a complicated issue with two sides that are both in kind of a shitty situation, and we should, inform ourselves about the conflict and the history of the conflict before we just make really bold, strident statements about how horrible Israel is. That's not actually very controversial, but it's controversial enough today that, like, you're a persona non grata for saying something like that. Unless I could maybe go write that at National Review or something, but you couldn't get away with that at Kotaku or Polygon or IGN or any. I mean, IGN, I guess, is not as politicized as some of these sites, I think. But
no, I think they're trying. I just think that they're failing to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think they have the strength as a unit to do it. No offense to them. I don't think they have the appropriate heft, and I also don't think they have the corporate. Culture like, a Kotaku or a Polygon does, where a Vox or whatever, old school Gawker would allow you to unionize and be political and put, non sequiturs on your timelines and all of that. So I agree with you. It's just strange times. I feel bad for the audience in a sense, because I know people are really clamoring for, like, some really thoughtful stuff coming out of someone's mouth in gaming, and I'm trying from like my small perspective to just do a little bit. I know I see I see a few other people doing it, and like, I just wish it was less about, like, I'll give you a good example, just a general example, a content example. I don't understand what people's obsession with reaction videos are, like live reaction videos. Mm-hmm. And when E3 was like lead up to E3, people were like, are you going to live react to Sacred Symbols live reaction? And I'm like, why do you want that? This is lowest common denominator nonsense of people with their stupid, goofy headline or thumbnails and overreacting to every announcement and all that. Like, don't you want me to think about it? Like, let me think about it for a minute, and then I'll give you I'll write the show, and I'll have a bunch of notes, and I'll have things to say. And I know most of my audience is like that, but I'm still trying to kind of shake some of the audience into this, out of this almost complacency of saying like, no, you deserve better content than a person watching a live. Anyone can do that. Right. It's fun. I've done a million of them.
When you watch the video, you're supposed to react to it. Right. Watch someone else reacting to it. I mean,
yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's what Twitter's for also.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to shoot off a thought, you can tweet that. Like, and then you can think about it and write. I don't get that either. But the lowest common denominator is, it's called that for a reason. So
I agree. And I also feel like I'm trying to just let some of the audience know that they're not the lowest common denominator, that there is better content than, because someone was saying, someone on one of our YouTube videos was like, you guys are so late on this. And I just tweeted back, but our content is better. And a bunch of people thumbed it up. So I feel like the audience also in this new pay model and this new fan funded model and all of that, it's also about finding those like-minded individuals that kind of get it and realize, oh, this is all kind of boring, and oh, everyone is saying the same thing, and oh, everyone does have these weird relationships with publishers and developers. Like, we totally stopped even talking to anyone in the gaming industry over 2 years ago. We don't take anything from anyone. And
that's smart.
Yeah, and it's just, dude, it's so freeing.
Yeah. To
just be like to the audience, you know what? We are not going to hit embargo because we don't even have the game yet, and we'll buy it the same time you do, and then we'll experience it together. And the audience has just grown. They've actually come to take to it because they're like, oh, you feel like a normal person playing Returnal with me, as opposed, imagine a world where you stopped playing Returnal and reviewed it, and then it came out, and that was the end. The whole story of Returnal is what's happened with it afterwards. So I just feel like I want to just let the audience know, we're not just doing it for ourselves. We're doing it because I think that you'll appreciate the content more if it's more thoughtful. And I also have learned that from just watching and listening to a lot of things outside of our sphere, where I think coverage is just far superior. I think sports coverage is far superior to gaming coverage. I think political coverage is obviously much more mature. So, and I'm not saying mature in it's very well respectable. It's just mature in an industry. So I just feel like we have to learn from those things and keep our minds open. And then hopefully all this stuff kind of comes out on the wash, because I don't want anyone to lose their jobs, but people will swim or they'll sink. I think there are certain people, I talked to some of them, and I've told them they're goddamn faces. I think people like Ryan McCaffrey and Damon Hatfield and those guys can live, and Destin Legary and those guys. If IGN went away, I think they'd be fine. You would think that people would read the room though better and realize, oh, I better get my portfolio in order because Kotaku might not exist in 2 years, and that's not me being a dickhead. It's just, they removed. You can just tell no one reads the site anymore. And
they've lost some big names too.
They have, and that's all cyclical though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, Jason was putting out some investigative, more in-depth pieces, but I would say that he was really the only one at the site doing anything really important. And say what you will about him as whatever.
Yeah,
but
it's neither here nor there. But I will remind you, the old Kotaku used to burn the fuck out of publishers and actually destroyed their relationships with Sony. Destroyed their relationship. People might remember Kotaku leaked PlayStation Home. They weren't allowed access to PlayStation games for fucking ever. They leaked all sorts of Ubisoft games and were cut off from Ubisoft for years and years. That was renegade journalism. That's a good thing. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's good shit. That's good shit.
We've gotten blacklisted by Sony, and I'm not even really sure why. But it actually is kind of nice, because it's just well, whatever. I know I'm not getting any review codes. I never make embargo anyways. I never have. My Last of Us 2 review came out 3 months after the game came out, which is super late, but whatever. I just would rather have a good review out there. And, trying to hit embargo, trying to play this stupid game with these awful, huge, corporations, these publishers, they don't play the game with us. I don't know why we're supposed to play the game with them.
Precisely.
They're the most opaque, the walled off corporations in existence. I swear to God, gaming publish it. You know, when I interview people in TV or movies, it's like, here's the phone number for this actor. You guys have a nice phone call. When I interview somebody in games, it's like, there are 4 people from PR sitting in the background, and we're going to watch every single thing they say, and it's a mess. And yeah, I just don't know. Like, it's much better to just be honest, even if you're a little late, or even if you don't get that, you know, review code and you got to spend $50-$60 on a game. Who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because gamers are why not spend the money on a game? Like, then at least you know you can feel burned if it sucks.
Yeah, I know.
Just like everybody else.
I know ACG, who does Defining Duke on our network with Mr. Matty Plays. I know that he gets games early, but then buys the game for someone, I think, and gives it away.
That's
and
nice.
To kind of keep it. And I like that, although I'm still of the mind that, like you said, just untethering completely from them, realizing that they have no control over you. You everything leads up to these moments where you need them, but otherwise you don't. And so, like, I was thinking actually in that regard, PlayStation 5 came out, right? I ended up getting like 2 of them for myself, and I figured it all out just naturally. But I didn't need them, and that was probably the biggest moment that they were going to have over me for years and years.
Yeah.
So can you imagine? Like, it's all downhill from there, and I still didn't reach out to them, and I still don't want to. And I think the audience is cool with that, because not only what we're saying about kind of the realism of it, but sometimes people just like to hear what you have to say. I give a shout out to people like Jim Sterling and Angry Joe and other guys who put up reviews really late, and people still watch them sometimes by the millions or Donkey. You know,
I love Donkey.
Yeah, he's great. Like, you have a unique voice. People will just be like, oh, sometimes actually some of this stuff is even more. There's more lucidity with it when you've already played the game or experienced something, or things have kind of sat out there for a while. I mean, think about Cyberpunk, a really great example. That game burned everyone. Anyone who like pre-orders a game or believes any PR hype, or especially after No Man's Sky, it's like, how many times is this going to happen?
Oh,
These guys, it's not that people are lying to you. It's just that they're seeing really polished builds, and they're not media trained, and they're eating up PR bullshit, and they're going to dinners, and they're getting wined and dined. And by the way, like, when you make $50,000 or $60,000 writing a game, or writing for a games website, it's hard not to feel special when you go out to a steak dinner and people are picking up $500 or $1,000 tabs in front of you and stuff, and that stuff eats into your mind. And I feel so much better, Eric, like not being involved in that, not even having worry at all. I just know when a game comes out, and that's the end.
The decadence of those events is really something. I've only been to a few because right away I could tell that it's you're walking into really murky ethical waters. But like, go into those parties after GDC, or go into those dinners, or, you know, go into the review events, and you get the fancy food, you get open bar, and people come around with like the little trays of appetizers, or they have
they're often putting you up
everywhere. And of course, because, you know, Forbes has a policy where you can't accept travel, you can't accept lodging, but you still can accept dinners and all that kind of stuff. And you could just look around, and I mean, I would hear people talking about, you know, their flights, their hotels, how excited they were excited for all this, and I get it. Like, that's exciting. It's exciting to be flown out somewhere. But you know, like, but then you're in their pockets, even if you don't want to, even if you don't think you are. You're in their pockets.
Yeah, you're
at least getting flights. You know,
you're beholden to them. I mean, I can give you so many examples of just looking backwards. I'm like, wow, that was weird. A really good example is I think it was in 2011, I went to Bethesda rented out like an entire ski lodge in Utah, and did it. They were showing Skyrim, the original Prey 2 that was canceled. So we saw that. That was like the Human Head one. And then they showed, like, I don't know, Hunted the Gathering or something, some other shit. Oh, and Brink was there, Splash Damage's game. And we were just kind of there for 3 days, staying in this beautiful space. They gave us all like beautiful jackets, like fleece jackets, and it was just like so strange. And that was one of my first experiences like that too, and I kept experiencing things over and over again, and then really writing quite sardonically about them, and kind of talking about them on the podcast in such a way. I always loved the ones where it was, at the very most, I remember, like, for instance, Fear 3, WB like just rented out a pub, and they invited everyone to come play multiplayer and then write about it, and I was like, that's cool. It's like, why do I have to go to Paris to see fucking Assassin's Creed? I mean, that's the kind of shit that people used to do. Yeah, like, Ubisoft used to be like, you want to see Assassin's Creed, you're going to Florence, and you're going to be there for a week. Or you want to go see Gran Turismo, you're going to go to Polyphony Digital's racetrack in Japan. And it's like, but you can just send me a build, and then I don't have to do that. And It's not like that anymore. It's really not. And even towards the tail end of my time at IGN, it stopped being like that. Mm-hmm. A really good example is, remember the EA game Dante's Inferno?
Uh-huh.
There was. Do you remember the PR fiasco about that? That's one of the greatest things. People can go read about this, but EA would send out for each of the deadly sins. They would send out something to the outlet or the reviewer, and for greed, they literally sent, like, I don't know who it was, like Jeff Haynes or something at IGN, a $500 check in his name, like, as like, this is greed. And it was supposed to be a thing where you're supposed to write about it and all of that, but it's like, you literally, this is a cashable $500 check, and you're going to tell me that no one cashed that check? No one at these outlets cashed that check? The other thing I'll tell you, too, that was really weird is that game, and this is a funny thing, I was thinking about this lately. People would think this was funny. We used to get games like, you remember a game like FIFA would come out on PS2, PS3, PSP, Wii, GameCube, blah, blah, blah. You get like 17 builds of this game, boxed builds from 2K or whatever. And people used to take these builds at IGN and then just go sell them to GameStop. And people used to accumulate thousands and thousands of dollars in GameStop money by just selling the games back. That was kind of the culture back then.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, like I'm not even going to shout out any names, but I know people that like never paid for a game because of that. Yeah, so it's very different now. It's not as, it's much more constrained now, but it's also much more boring, I got to say, too. I feel like there's some sort of relationship with that, but I would rather be boring, I guess, and honest, but I wouldn't blame anyone for seeing situations that I was in and being like, well, Colin's on the take. I wasn't, but I don't blame you for thinking that. If you saw some of the ostentatious shit that I was at and some of the hotel rooms I've stayed in, some of the beautiful things I've been to, it sucks. But when you know what, Eric, it's taking advantage of people because it all ties back in. We're young. Most of us at the time in our 20s, we're out of college. We make no money. We have no guidance. We have no idea what we're supposed to do. Most of us didn't even major in journalism. And then we're just being like, we're told just like, oh, go.
That's fine. This is great.
Here's an Amex card, and you just go to Europe now. No rules. Yeah, we don't know. We have no expectations of you. And it's like,
that's fun. I mean, how are you going to not want to do that? Like, of course. Like, I've never been to Florence. I'm going to go to Florence.
Dude, my last New York Comic Con, I'll admit this. My last New York Comic Con in 2014, I already knew I was going to leave IGN. And that used to be my favorite show. I wasn't feeling well during the show, so I didn't feel too bad about it. But I always used to go to Gamescom or Tokyo Game Show or something and work really hard. I'd go to E3 and work really hard, just work to the bone. And I was just like, what would happen if I didn't do anything?
Yeah.
And I went to New York Comic Con in 2014, and I didn't do anything. I didn't go to any appointments. I didn't go to any panels. I think I went to Long Island to see my dad. And then no one said anything. And I was like, what is...
Okay.
Was I even working hard for any reason at all? It's just weird. It was just a weird kind of thing to go out on where I had to test the theory, and it ended up being true, which is sad. And it makes me wonder, wow, no one noticed all this time as I was up at 4 a.m. and in Cologne writing previews for Vita games. No one gave a shit.
Right. I find it hard to work at those things. Like, I went to E3 a couple years ago, and it's just, the internet sucks. And there's crowds everywhere, and you're waiting in lines. And by the time you find a place to like get your laptop out, like it's just a pain in the ass. And then you're supposed to go to like the parties or the big presentations. And I found that like just covering from remotely, if I just want to do news stuff, it's way easier. And everything's everything's streamed now.
Definitely.
So. And now, of course, now in COVID times, like their game previews are all online now. So you want to do a game preview of the new Assassin's Creed or whatever? You've got Parsec. You just fire it up. Preview it from your office. No one's whining and dining you. It feels a lot. I mean, it is more boring.
No one watching over you. How awful is that when you're at a preview event and they're watching you play and like?
Yeah, it's like
it's away. Often. I mean, I feel bad for them too. I mean, back in the day, it used to be like a bunch of the dev team, right? Like people that are not media trained, they're pulled out to deal with this. Each of them is assigned to a kiosk. And I used to eventually go to them and be like, I don't need you. I'm not trying to be rude, but you're making me nervous. I remember actually with Horizon Zero Dawn, when I played it for the first time, I was like, you guys got to just leave me alone, man. Like I've been playing games for a long time. I'll figure it out. I'll figure out how to bring up the weapon wheel and, I'll kill the robot dinosaur. Just like give me a moment. So it's fascinating. I know people love these stories and they are fun to talk about, but it is crazy looking back and having just more wisdom and experience in my life. Wisdom comes with age and time. You can't just learn wisdom. It doesn't look. And I look backwards and I'm like, I can see why someone would be like, well, shit, I got this Sunset Overdrive shirt at a Sunset Overdrive event. I have a sweet shirt too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It is interesting. So I am glad that things are much more democratized. Anyone can say anything now, and yeah, like you said, Parsec and all these things exist and Sony can send native builds on PSN. They do it. They just won't. And so, like, I remember, like, they do it sometimes, but not very often. And then it's in your download list and it's really annoying and it stays there forever. But I feel like what I think we need the most is just this continued democratization, more voices. I know it's lame, but more speech. And then things kind of shake out and then we can see what happens. But if I were in one of these monolithic companies, I'd be really scared.
Oh, yeah. And rightfully so. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, no one should rest on their laurels at this point. This is, the things change so fast now also. Like, just the technology changes, just where viewers or readers are going changes. How, again, the whims of Google, the whims of Facebook, Twitter, who knows what's going to happen. I mean, and I think we've set some really, frightening speech precedents for sure with these big tech companies as they start to take more and more of a role in, and people say, well, that's not free speech, but it is free speech. Like, these companies are huge and they're a huge part of our lives, and in a way that, governments really aren't, and so there's just a lot of uncertainty in the world. And so, yeah, I don't think people should ever, just because you've got a job at and really, honestly, what journalist should ever be, feel safe ever?
Not now. I mean, unfortunately, ever, I love journalism, but yeah, I agree in the sense, Eric, like, we exist in this new and exciting ecosystem, and it's kind of like it's not like kill or be killed, but like live or die kind of situation. You're either going to figure it out or you're not. You're going to be the guy who runs the old horse stable, or you're going to be the guy that runs the garage that fixes cars. It's just the way it is. Maybe I'll be on the other end of that one day. Probably. I already feel like I am in some ways. I don't understand TikTok, and I think about that sometimes too, where like my niece and nephews were like talking to me about that like 3 years ago, and I still don't get it. And so I know that it's only going to come to me too. And I also know that we're not like totally mono dependent on Patreon, but we've put our eggs into that basket too. And sometimes I get scared of that. I mean, I don't say anything crazy, but you never really know. To your point about free speech, like, I was really aghast when Twitter banned Donald Trump. I thought that was fucking crazy. I still think that's crazy. The president of the ex-president of the United States. Like, how are you?
I think they should ban all politicians from Twitter. Just take it away from everyone. If you're going to take it away from Trump, take it away from all these assholes. But yeah, no, I despise Trump. But, thinking about that over the months since then, I agree with you. It sets a really dangerous precedent.
That's the most powerful man in the world. Now, it's kind of a good sign that like a company can do that, I guess. But it's weird that like you have almost like these oligarchies developing around the world and people rooting companies on against individuals. It's very strange and backwards. Liberalism has become very illiberal, which I've been shocked by. I was talking to Jaffe, I think, about it on his show as well. Like, I'm thrilled. Like, the one thing that I always wanted as like a paleo or a kind of a moderate conservative was like, I wish we were a little bit more socially liberal, and I wish we were more accepting of like all free speech. Like, who cares if you burn a flag? Who cares if you marry a gay man? Who gives a shit? And now that almost is like, we've almost taken that platform. It's actually kind of nice. So I think it benefits like some of the other things that I believe, but at the same time, I'm concerned that companies have that kind of power and that people root it on. And it's not so much about the literal definition, although it could be, of freedom of speech, because that, of course, is governmental, but it's the spirit of thinking whether or not a corporation should have that kind of power, and also the control over the public sphere and how they can wield that. If Donald Trump, for instance, I'm not a Trump fan either, of course, but if Trump is the nominee in 2024, I think it's profoundly unfair if he's banned from these platforms. I don't think that will lose the election for him. And a company shouldn't have that kind of power. When a company has that kind of power over, say, an election, then you know that company needs to be regulated differently than a standard corporation. And that I'm saying that and that people on the far left aren't saying that, the people,
Right.
the Berkeley types, is crazy. Because I was
they
in
would
college
change
not that
there,
long
too.
ago, and I didn't hear many people like me saying this.
Right.
So
I feel like it's so much, in the politics game, people that don't usually have principles. That's the thing. They go where the wind blows. They're not upset that Trump got banned, but if their guy got banned, they would be. And so it's arbitrary, and that's dangerous. If Twitter wants to delete some of Trump's tweets, when he tweets something that's particularly egregious, it goes past, it breaks their terms of service, whatever. Fine, that's their prerogative. But yeah, you get into dangerous territory, flat out banning him. Okay, even like a temporary ban, that's one thing. Because I understand, like, companies have to do something with people who abuse their platforms. But yeah, it's a weird. You're right. Liberalism has become illiberal. It's really strange because I am a liberal. It's really strange to sort of be standing here with my political beliefs and watch as people who are theoretically on the same side of the aisle as me just move in directions that I find completely illiberal and authoritarian and just unpleasant. I find the left so deeply unpleasant these
I
days.
agree.
They're humorless. They're self-serious. They're self-congratulatory. They just bother the shit out of me. I don't understand it. I don't feel like my views have really changed that much. I mean, I've probably gotten a little more conservative around some issues and maybe a little more liberal around other issues. But as we get into a lot of these political debates and social debates, like I always describe myself as as socially liberal. But lately, I find like social politics moving further to the left than I'm comfortable with in a lot of ways.
I agree.
And I see that, and I have kids and I worry about what they're being taught in schools. And I'm like, wait, what happened? I don't feel like I've changed, but the world has gone in such a weird, crazy direction with some of this shit.
Well,
and it's just like, holy crap.
This is what I tweeted at you the other day because I was surprised to see you tweet out something about critical race theory where you were saying like it's not really you said something about the definition of critical race theory, about how people. Am I mischaracterizing your tweet? You tweeted something about how like you were surprised that critical race theory, like what people are debating as CRT is not CRT. That was you.
I said
right?
that 90% of or 95% whatever of people who are arguing about it don't know what it is.
Right. And I tweeted,
and I was referring to everybody. I wasn't referring to like the right wingers coming after it, or it was just. I don't think it's just one of those things that's kind of this obscure, like social political like argument that most people don't even. Liberals or people are like, well, it's critical race theory. That sounds good, so we support it. And I think a lot of conservatives are like, we hate it because it's critical race theory, and no one is actually debating. Well, some people are, but most people are just sort of retweeting or supporting whoever they support, and they don't really engage with it critically, just like everything else.
Yeah, I feel like I bring that up only because, in stepping back and thinking about what you were saying earlier, just before, CRT and this kind of idea, this obfuscation of, well, it's not critical race theory, and it's like, but things are changing and people are identifying it and they don't know what to call it. That's all that is. And that was why I brought it up was, yeah, it's not critical race theory. I know that's like a third year law school class that no one takes. I get that. But suddenly people are very concerned about definitions when everyone is a Nazi. Everyone is a fascist. Everyone is a homophobe and a transphobe. Oh, critical race theory? That's not critical race theory. It's like, I don't think you can have it both ways. If Mitch McConnell is a national socialist, okay, then I think white fragility is critical race theory. I'm sorry. Those are the rules that I didn't make those rules. Yeah. And it's very similar to the kind of how I feel now about even cancel culture in quotes. I was an early attempted victim of cancel culture, obviously.
I was going to ask you about that, but yeah.
And I've been saying to people recently, like, you know what? Someone actually put it to me, a fan of mine, and I kind of have adopted it. It's like, you don't have... I used to really be like, and people might know on Twitter if they follow me, I used to be a really loud proponent. We have to speak out against all acts of, squashing of free speech. What happened to Kathy Griffin or Bill Maher or whatever the case might be back in the day. Like people that I don't necessarily... I like Bill Maher, but people that I wouldn't necessarily ally myself with. And then what I realized was like no one on that side in quotes was ever doing any of the same stuff for anyone on the other side. And so now I just don't, what I say is just, I'm not a participant. If I see one of these people drowning that has been trying to drown other people, I'm not going to throw you a rope. I'm going to walk right past you, you know? So I think that that's my way of resisting in some way this increasing authoritarianism. I think people kind of realize, hopefully I'm knocking on wood, that I'm kind of outside of it. Like I kind of talk to people online when they give me shit. I'm like, you're not going to be able to really hurt me. You know, like you might as well take your bullshit to someone else because we're not playing that game here. And when people try to play that game with me, I try to invite them on my show. I even offer to make $1,000 donations to their charities of choice to make them appear on the show, and they won't do it. You know,
why is that? Do you think? Like, why won't they show up?
Well, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but I dissect a lot of these people. But I also think a lot of it is like iron sharpens iron. I'm so used to defending myself that I'm very, very willing to do it. I don't say things just out of my ass. Like sometimes I'm wrong about things. We've talked in the past about how we became acquainted with my Mass Effect piece back in 2012. That was fucking stupid. I mean, my take on that. You know, you taught me a lot about that. I also told you that you taught me the word pernicious. Yes. And I look at that and I just try to wonder, can we get to a position where more people are open-minded to being wrong, to having their minds changed, and to also not, it's like what I was saying with Michael Malice's quote before, not boxing ourselves in such a way that we have to have a predetermined answer. A Kotaku, 6 days in Fallujah happens. I wonder what Kotaku is going to say.
Right.
You know, but I also don't want people to feel that way about me. And what I think I've been kind of keeping people on their feet, and I know you do the same in others, which is why you were saying earlier, you get called, the greatest compliment is being called both a communist and a fascist. If you're being called a communist and a fascist, you're definitely in a great place because no one has any idea what you are.
Yeah, if they can't pin you down, then you can't get pinned down.
Right,
it's not
exactly.
a bad thing.
So
you may not score as many points with the crowd, but that's okay too.
I totally agree. So with cancel culture, like I just try not to be a participant, and it sucked what happened to me, but I'm so disappointed that no one seemed to have learned anything from that. We see just more and more people being, I don't want to say destroyed. I mean, someone like Scott Cawthorn or Cawthon or whatever his name is a multimillionaire. He's going to be fine, right. But
he'll be fine.
I just don't understand. I guess it goes back to what you were saying about unpleasantness. Why is it that people want to destroy other people as almost like what it seems to be the game is about? Not
right. It is. It is a game. It's
that's,
a meta
that's
game,
not
right?
me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like, so when I made a joke, we'll talk about your your tweet joke, because that's, I believe, the nexus of your cancellation attempts. But I joked about the new Halo, the new fake Cortana the other day, and I got it really, I put Cortana next to fake Cortana, and I put the Halo 4 version of Cortana. She's very scantily clad or whatever.
Right.
And I joked, I made a joke, this is why we can't have nice things, which of course is just like a meme. And man, people were so pissed off. They were like trying to make fun of me because all I care about is, boobs or whatever. And the insult horny was thrown at me a bunch. And I'm just like, why is horny an insult exactly? Like,
yeah, I don't even know.
I think it's pretty much the default condition, but it's just so like, it's just this humorless, like, we're going to, mock this person and make them look bad because of this totally innocuous. I mean, it's just nothing that bad about what I said at all. It's just kind of a stupid joke. I mean, who cares? Just ignore it. But no, it's very important to a certain set of people to make a lot of noise in a very unpleasant and very humorless way. And I just find it just really off-putting, I guess. And what was it that you said, though? What was the thing that
I just said on day, it was like International Women's Day. It was like there was a hashtag day without a woman, and I just said peace and quiet. Day without. And I still think it's a really funny and stupid Al Bundy joke. It's nothing. Yeah. That's the thing. I immediately identified that was fake outrage. No one was offended by that. No one was hurt by that. It does not matter. Do you know how many dudes probably made a
similar joke? Like,
I'm sorry?
All these people that were mad at you have probably made a very similar joke in the past.
Definitely.
I mean, men and women make jokes about each other all the time. It's like, it's as old as humanity, making fun of the opposite sex. I mean, like,
It's harmless, and it's
totally harmless.
It just goes to show this very silly. I don't know. It's so. I think it's clear this is Trump era broke a lot of people, and I mean, it's just so obvious. You were talking about like you didn't change. No, you probably didn't. I mean, I think that there's a lot of like just inherent gaslighting going on, maybe just in the nature of things by convincing people that they've changed when they haven't. A lot of people have gone nuts. And
COVID didn't help either.
No, COVID didn't. I mean, COVID just compounded it, and who knows what will compound it in the future. But I just feel like when something like that happens to you in the gaming industry, because that's happened to me too, I always try to look at because it gets retweeted and liked or whatever. But then you realize it's not like it's not like fans of a website, or it's like themselves. It's people in the industry enhancing this thing, circulating it amongst themselves endlessly. And that's not real engagement. And that's not real reach. That's a dunk, and that's fine. We all, you have to be that guy sometimes that gets dunked on. It's just the way it goes. But
it's very true. But
we dunk and we get dunked on. It's just the cycle of things. But I feel like there's just a lot of... You had mentioned this earlier in the conversation, just this disingenuousness and kind of just this lying and framing things as if, in the least charitable light in order to make someone look awful. And I've just realized that there's a certain group of people I'm never going to convince. And the more I've accepted that and freed myself from that, the more I've just not worried so much about it. And the bigger my reach has gotten, because I can't please everyone. And it's hard sometimes on the internet because it's all encapsulated in a tweet someone sends you and everyone likes because it makes you feel bad about yourself and all of that. But really, it's the next thing the next day. I was thinking about that actually. Like some people, like Glenn Greenwald, a person we both like, people dunk on him all the time, and I actually appreciate it because he just continues to engage and continues to combat and realizes that like no one is even going to remember this tomorrow. Right. No one. Remember, Chrissy Teigen was like the biggest thing on Twitter last week. Remember, like no one talks about Chrissy Teigen now, right?
I didn't even hear about it.
Well, she was
Twitter
like
a lot.
Well, I'm just saying, like that was a huge thing last week or 2 weeks ago, and nothing about that. Right now.
Oh, there's just a flash in the pan and then it's gone, unless it's something truly enormous. But usually they're not. They're just these little, almost contrived controversies about nothing, and people score their points and they get their blood sport, and then it goes away. I always find it weird when people actually like shut down their entire Twitter, like go private and like just completely go. It's like you can just block or mute people if you're really feeling it, or you could just go away from Twitter for a while and come back in a week and just don't read your mentions. Like no big deal.
Dude, did you see the Twitter product guy? One of the product leads was tweeting about some of these ideas they had a week or so ago. And I tweeted at him, I'm trying to find it. He said something that was awesome about they are thinking about this idea where you can just, here it is. Check out these early concepts that can help you get control unwanted attention on Twitter. So you can basically, if someone @s you, they're playing with this functionality where you can just remove yourself from the tweet completely. So it's like, even if it's a response to you, like you tweet something and it's a response to you, you can just remove that tweet. So it's just literally something they say and no one sees it. And I'm not saying that from a censorious way. In a censorious way, it just kind of cleans up your own experience. And I think, I tweeted back at them, I hope they do it because I think it'll make Twitter better and more usable because people will just be way less hostile because there'll be total control over that because people just say mean things in order to get those mentions or whatever, those accolades that you would get, that dopamine hit. And so it reminded me a lot of that. And I feel like because I block people pretty liberally. I'm not crazy about it, but if they brought that functionality back, I would unblock everyone on my block list, everyone, because there's no way they can fuck with me at that point.
It's so overwhelming on Twitter though, because if you say one thing, a dozen people could respond to that, and it's a dozen different threads. And so even if if one of them is resolved, then this could be the other 11, and then they can branch off into different threads. There's no way you can actually keep track of that or deal with that in any sort of healthy way. Now, if you can just bow out like you're describing, that would be pretty nice.
Yeah, it's cool.
Save a lot of stress.
You're right. It reads like an Until Dawn or Detroit Become Human fucking butterfly effect chart. And I agree. So I end up muting a lot of threads, and I feel bad because then later sometimes I go and I look and I'm like, oh, I missed something interesting or cool here
Right.
because everyone's just being so annoying. So I get you. I'm much more of a reader. I'm also going back and deleting a bunch of my old tweets. I've been doing that actively, and it goes back to my strategy guide stuff. I'm so OCD. That's why I was a good strategy guide writer, that I hate having all these tweets that respond to people and accounts that are not there anymore. So I've just been going back and framing like things a month at a time, like from December 1st to December 31st, 2010. Show me all my tweets, and then I can go through and remove all of them.
I am too lazy for that. I would just let it all be. Like, whatever.
I'm all about inbox zero. I'm all about all that stuff, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I like inbox zero. Yeah, that's a good feeling because, oh my God. That would be another nice thing about just cutting ties with the industry entirely. It'd be like, I don't need to have 25 different pitches this morning, like, of what I should cover, of just things that don't even relate to what I write about, even a little bit. But so I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your joke that was heard around the world. What happened after this? Because this seemed to be like, I was so surprised by all of it because it seemed so harmless to me. It's kind of like a silly joke, like whatever, no big deal, no one's hurt by this. And then it just seemed like people were so upset. And I've even watched I saw a couple podcasts with you, or listened to them with some people that you talked to about this, and kind of like trying to, I don't know, mend bridges or whatever. And I'm just thinking to myself the whole time, like, what the fuck? Honestly, this is such even a mild joke. If you were to go onto any sort of like watch any sort of comedy special, you watch like 10 minutes of Bill Burr or something, like, it just doesn't even compare. Like, why are people so mad? So I'm just curious, like, what happened? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what happened in some way. It's almost something I've still not totally thought about and absorbed completely.
Yeah.
As crazy as that is. I think it's obvious that people were, I was a dissonant voice kind of a dissonant voice in the industry. And I think people people see openings, weaknesses, and they try to take advantage of these things. And I think that was one of those situations. I just don't think I was well regarded in a lot of media circles because I wasn't one of them. Especially this, you have to understand when this happened. This happened in March of 2017, like right after Trump was elected and sworn in. So that is a massively important part of understanding the culture around games and how much it shifted and changed, and how much I saw people that I knew and had a lot of affection for change as well, and become very weird. Yeah, almost unrecognizable in a lot of ways. So I think that that's kind of what happened, and I think that it's gotten worse by an order of magnitude in some ways for some people. Like, they can't let it go because it didn't work. They just try over and over again in some different ways to try to bring things up that I've said. They try to claim I'm racist or transphobic or whatever, and it's just like, it's not Teflon kind of stuff, but it's just not real, right? So you're not going to find people in real life that like said anything horrible to them or mistreated someone or anything. You're not, like you were talking about E3 and GDC parties and stuff. Like, I used to go to all these things around the world. I never went to one E3 party, one GDC party. I'm a very reserved person. I'm kind to people. I tried to have, I tried to mentor people at IGN and tried to treat them well and advocate for them. That's why it's so weird that I was kind of like an everyman at IGN. I tried to like take the brunt of things from bosses, and I tried to bring the younger guys and girls to lunch and dinner and try to listen to them and all of that. So it was hard to kind of lose all of that in an instant in some way, because I didn't really understand that I was so dispensable to people. But I think that it's the product. It's hard not to also take that personally and think about yourself in a really negative way. And I had to kind of get over that. But I also realized that it is just a moment in time, that it's not really unique to me. It actually happens to lots of different people. Some people survive it and some people don't. If I didn't hold my ground, who knows where I'd be right now or what I'd be doing. I just knew that, kind of funny. I mean, at the end of the day, when you look back at it, they sold me out, and it is what it is. And I'm not sorry that it happened, because I'm where I'm at now, but it wasn't always an easy road to get from point A to point B. And I think what kind of disappoints me the most about it is just that I don't want that to define my career to a lot of people, which I know now that it does, because I've submitted and contributed a great deal to this industry. And I was remarking to Jaffe on our interview a few weeks ago that, it sucks because one of the downsides of it, you can control the personal aspects of it. I don't talk to most of these people anyway. It's like, they're just passing friends. But the one aspect of it that you can't control is like losing your legacy and having yourself kind of erased from things you did. And, being erased from Podcast Beyond, being erased from Kind of Funny, being erased from P.S. I Love You, being erased from all these things that I built myself, sometimes with other people, sometimes not. And that's the only downside and deficit, because my girlfriend Micah brought up to me not too long ago, she's like, you are very obsessed with leaving something behind. That's what she said. And I'm like, I am. I'm totally... I want to leave something behind that's good, and I just don't want that to be like the first thing people think of with me, because I did write the definitive history of Naughty Dog. I did write the definitive history of Insomniac and Sucker Punch and Sony Bend, and I did break a bunch of stories. Dozens and scores of stories I broke. I was the one that told you about Demon Souls on PS5. I was the one that told you Horizon 2 was a PS4 game. Don't remember me just for that. It doesn't define me. But unfortunately, I can't control whether someone lets that define me for them.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Although, and optimistically, it's early days, really, when you think about it. I mean, you're
Definitely.
what, 36? 37?
I'm 36, yeah, and
Yeah.
It's been 4 years, a little over 4 years. So yeah, you're totally right. You're absolutely right. It's just that's the only thing that that comes into focus for me sometimes, where I'm like, do you really miss fake friends? Do you really miss all
Right.
I hated working in the game industry, like as a person in the game industry, not what I do now. I didn't want to leave IGN to found a worse IGN, basically, like that was trying to do all the things IGN did. So I have to watch out for my own happiness as well. I think I would have come to this point eventually, but it happened on that timeline for those specific reasons because of that joke, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's still hard to wrap my brain around. I can see why it would be difficult to think about that, because it is just it's in the big scheme of things, like, it's just a little joke, and it's a sad world when jokes like that are career. I'm not going to say breaking, because obviously you've gone on to do so much after that, but career, like, tectonic plate shifting, and yeah, I mean, I guess it's probably a pretty good description to say fake friends, because I don't know. I guess if a colleague of mine made a similar joke, I would have a really hard time throwing them under the bus.
Right.
Because especially if, because you have to be you either have to be a very pure of heart, and your history has to be awfully squeaky clean, or you're a hypocrite. And my guess is most people haven't lived, squeaky clean lives where they've never made a similar joke or said something, slightly off color in their whole entire existence.
Right.
Which, and that's kind of this culture that we're building now, unfortunately, or not we, but that people are building, is one where there's this sort of constant purity test. And if you say the wrong thing, or if you said the wrong thing a decade ago, and you're not in the in crowd, well, then you're cast out and you're unclean. And it's just a terrible, terrible way to sort of build a society or culture. It's not sustainable, and it's not sane. But it's definitely where we're at now. And I don't know. I think it's going to implode eventually. And I think that, maybe hopefully we learn a few things, but, and I'm all for, at the same time, I'm all for a lot of the good progress that we've made in, like you were talking about earlier, like social issues, like gay marriage and stuff. That's fantastic. I'm glad that society has moved on from worrying about something like that. It's pointless. But to move, then I feel like sometimes there's a crowd that they have achieved some sort of victory, and now they have nothing left to do, and so now there's some new. They have to keep fighting. The war never ends, and it just keeps getting weirder.
Well, I think you're right, and I think the implosion can happen, at least in the States, as soon as 2022, if not 2024, because I think people are vastly overestimating people online, very online people, right? Mm-hmm. They really vastly overestimate how people feel out there. I mean, you would never know that 75 million people, for instance, would vote for Donald Trump,
right? By
reading Twitter. Right now, of course, Biden got 81 million, so it wasn't nearly enough. But, and again, I'm just using that as an example. But there are many of those examples. I don't know if you saw the voter ID. I thought this was awesome. That voter ID is a really controversial thing in the U.S., as maybe some of our foreign listeners don't know. And all this stuff came out from, I think, Monmouth or a really reputable PR or a polling firm where they're like 81% of people support voter ID. But if you read Twitter, you'd think that like the new Jim Crow, right? In quotes. It's the same thing with the in the Senate with the filibuster, where they're like, it's the Jim Crow filibuster, but they were using it against Donald Trump 400 times 2 years ago. So that's I think the implosion is going to happen sooner, because I think people are saying like, listen, and I've been trying to articulate this, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it properly, but when you think back about the things that have happened in the past, the social rights striving that has happened, good things, right? For instance, 1964 Civil Rights Act and the sit-ins and all of that for racial equality, gay rights in the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s, leading to the right to marry and all of that. These are logical things that don't affect you. You can't argue that a man marrying another man affects you, or that a black person going to elementary school affects you. It doesn't, right? It doesn't affect you. It has nothing to do with you, and it's ridiculous. It's bigoted. But now you're getting into situations where it's like, this boy is a girl, and she is going to play sports with, or actually vice versa. This girl is a boy or whatever it would be, and is going to play with the opposite sex. And you're supposed to just accept that that's real, right? You're supposed to accept the term chest feeding, or, what is it? Pregnant person or something like that. Like
menstruators.
Right? Like this, these are things that start affecting people.
Absolutely.
Themselves. And that's different. Right. And so, like, a person, for instance, I can speak for myself, I guess. I have no problem with a man identifying as a woman. I have no problem with a man being asked to be called a woman, to be called she, to have that all done. I don't care. But if you are a man and you want to identify as a woman, you can't play on the girls' fucking soccer team, dude.
Right.
You can't.
Well, this is the problem with the trans debate. We can't have a conversation about these issues, because if you say anything that steps out of the very, the trans activists line of thinking, then you're a transphobe. If you question the fact that, some of these guys come in and they can just destroy every female athlete's record in a year, that makes you a transphobe. But it's like, okay, what about all these women? Right. These, biological women you can't just say it doesn't affect them. You're not being transphobic because you care about these other people who are being impacted by that. It's a complicated debate. It's not an easy, just black and white debate, and it's fucked up to treat it that way. And it's fucked up to treat people who talk about it or question some of these things as just immediately as TERFs or transphobes, because there are actual, hateful people out there.
Of course.
And they don't give a shit about this. They don't want to have a nuanced discussion either. But then you get people who actually do, and who, like you're saying, like, I don't care if people want to identify as a different gender, but I do start to worry about things like that, and like, teenagers or children, that starts to get pretty dicey. And, even just talking about it in the most mild mannered way, you become a transphobe and are cast out, and they'll dox you and they'll go after you, and it's just not. It's just not healthy. This is not healthy.
No, it isn't. And you're right. Abigail Shrier has been writing about that a lot, and I feel like that's the point. And that's you made it a great point. Exactly where I was going, which was, it's perfect. All of these affirmative rights that we've gained, rightfully so, for people that have been cast down and separated and mistreated and all of that, it doesn't affect you. But when your daughter is playing on a soccer team against another team with a girl that was born a man, that does affect you. And when you are going to a Lamaze class or something, which is supposed to be a place kind of for, I guess, biological birthing women to learn breathing techniques or stuff, and that's supposed to be it kind of reminds me a little bit of like Boy Scouts, like when they had to accept girls. It's like, Girl Scouts shouldn't have to accept boys. It's like, what is going on here? Right. And so these are things where I'm wondering, it's people, I kind of equate them as it's the next civil, it's the next civil rights thing. And I'm like, but it's not, because now like we're twisting reality in such a way that it is affecting everyone. And I know girls in Connecticut are suing the state for this because they missed out on their scholarships because of it. And all you have to know is, and it comes up all the time, is that like an under 15 boys soccer team destroyed the World Cup girls team in a scrimmage a few years ago. You know?
Oh, yeah.
So the World Cup girls team that won everything.
Yeah.
Right? Was beaten by a 15-year-old boys soccer team in Texas.
Yeah.
That's
Biology
true.
actually matters.
Right.
Because you just can't change. It's just science, man. Like, you cannot change these fundamental aspects of what makes us, you know, the physical beings we are. I mean, I am so much bigger than most. I mean, I'm a big guy in general, but like, if I just said I was a woman and started, you know, playing like some of these sports, like that, just the muscle and bone mass, women just, they don't biologically cannot compete with that. It's just an issue of fairness. And if we're talking about fairness, if fundamentally the issue with trans rights or gay rights or any of these, it is equality and fairness, then we can't just throw out fairness while we talk about these issues. You know, we can't say, you know, we want the world to be more fair for trans people, and to get that, we're going to make it less fair for biological women. That doesn't seem like a very good approach to this very dicey debate. And you know, my girlfriend plays roller derby, though it's been shut down with the pandemic. But in roller derby, you know, that's a very physical sport. You're skating around a rink and you're running into people, and you know, and the issue even beyond the trans issue has been, you know, with the league having male players playing with female players. And it's just, I've never really been, you know, it's all about equality. And I just never really liked that, because some of these guys, when they run into a woman on skates, can really hurt them badly.
Yes, of course.
You know, really badly. So whether you're identifying as male or you're a male identifying as female, you have the physical characteristics and size and muscle mass to really do damage that, you know, maybe, you know, there are some chicks out there who can do a lot of damage too. But even if you're a bad roller derby player and you have 100 pounds and a lot of that's muscle on top of the strongest girl on the team, you can hurt someone's back. You can fuck them up permanently. And there's, you know, sorry, it matters.
That's exactly right. And it's what you were saying about the kind of the Overton window shifting in such a way that we're getting in the weird spaces now when you're talking about being socially liberal, which I consider myself incredibly socially liberal. I'm pro-sex worker. I'm pro-drug legalization. You know, polygamy. I don't care. I really don't care what people do, right? Like with themselves. If you want to identify as a woman and you want to marry a man and I don't care, you know, but like, it's almost painful how much I don't care about that. But I do care when we have to start bending reality. And it's the same thing where it's like trans women or women. I'm like, okay, I mean, I'm not going to fight with you about that, but it's not really true. I mean, you know,
well, that's
you could be
you
could be a trans woman. Why can't we just have language where it's like there are women and there are trans women, there are men and there are trans men? Why is that so offensive? Why is that so horrible?
This is what I don't get, and I'm glad you brought that up, because everyone always says now, gender is a construct. There are multiple genders, right? You hear that all the time. There's so many genders, infinite genders, whatever the fuck. But a trans woman is a woman. Okay, but you just said there's multiple genders. So are there just two genders where it's all just two, or are there multiple genders? What is it? Make up your mind.
Yeah,
because a trans woman is a trans woman. I mean, we say trans woman specifically because they are not a biological or cis woman.
Right. It's just the way words work. We don't have to disrespect them. We don't have to treat them any differently, but it is a descriptor, and I don't see why it's really that bad, because what it really is the reality is, and I've really been trying to articulate this in my own mind, is I feel for trans people because they're trying to fit into this male-female dichotomy generally in society, in which they feel like they have to kind of ask people to look the other way and fake this thing, while we kind of know that they're not like a natural-born woman or a natural-born man, and maybe our minds need to expand, to your point about like, well, just incorporating more ideas of what is femininity or what is masculinity without bending the actual definition of like a woman. A woman doesn't have a penis, you know? I'm sorry, like these things have a definition. I'm not trying to disrespect you. And those are the kinds of conversations, like you said, where these are not affirmative like rights. These are things that actually affect other people. And so they have to be talked about with more deliberateness, you know, women's spaces and women's bodies and all of these kinds of things. I'm a little surprised by it. It's why it's why I think intersectionality starts to eat itself, because there's clearly a hierarchy here. Womenhood is not as important as transhood in the hierarchy of intersectionality, which I find very strange, you know. And I feel for women, because I think that a lot of them have been kind of cowed. I know that they have been. A lot of them have been, and you see with J.K. Rowling and others just speaking up. And you read what she says, and it's like she didn't say anything bad, dude. She didn't say anything.
It's so measured, and it's so compassionate, and it's so reasonable, and yet it is the, you know, people are just so anti-Harry Potter and the whole thing now. It's like she went out and started murdering children or something. Or told some International Women's Day joke. I don't know, something really bad, you know.
Exactly. And you're hey, by the way, Eric, you're setting up. I fear for trans women, especially because they obviously have to fit into this beauty archetype in the West. Sure. They're never going to fulfill it for many people, and that's sad. That sucks, because they're never going to feel connected probably from the inside and the outside in a way that will fulfill, let's say, like a straight man's desire for femininity, right? And I feel like it almost should be built into the social construct that these things are different, such that I feel like trans women would be safer and happier being identified as such, in my opinion. That way they don't find themselves in a... Because it's always like, you know, trans women are in danger. What if a trans woman is with a man and the man finds out? And I'm like, I feel like you should be telling the man that you're a trans woman long before that happens.
Yes, absolutely.
Because... you know, people will say like, well, you know, you have to, if you're into women, of course you're into trans women. And I'm like, well, that wouldn't work for me. No offense. No offense.
That's totally unreasonable. I've gotten into this debate also. This whole like idea of like the super straight thing came out a little while ago, and there was all this controversy. But the idea that you're transphobic if you don't want to be with a trans woman, to me, is so backwards. Like, who is allowed to tell you what your sexual preference is?
It's crazy.
How is that an issue that the left is promoting? Like, sexual desire, sexual preferences are deeply personal, and you can't tell anyone what they should or shouldn't like. And again, if we are accepting that there are multiple genders, well, you know, then we got to also have hope that there's somebody for everybody, right? Maybe some guys want to be with trans women and they don't want to be with biological women. Cool, great, but I don't have to be that, you know? You know, it's just like, you can't tell. It's like that, I don't remember who it was, but a couple years ago, there was that porn actress, and she didn't want to do sex scenes with gay guys. And she was shamed and humiliated on Twitter, and she killed herself. And it's like, how dare you tell this girl she's not homophobic for this. She's worried about
her body.
Sexually transmitted diseases, which there is a higher risk. That's just science. That's just fact. And it's her body. She can be with whoever she wants. How are we shaming a sex worker into not having sex with the people that we think she should be with? And it's the same thing. Like, you know, if you're not supposed to tell a trans person that they shouldn't be trans, well, how can you tell a non-trans person that they should want to be with a trans person? Or it's just as bad as if you tell someone who wants to be with a trans person that they shouldn't be. I mean, it's just fucking crazy.
Right.
And the fact that we've entered a realm where this conversation we're having would be perceived as transphobic rather than as just like basic humanity, like we're just trying to talk about how to make civilization work a little bit better, that's crazy to me. And of course we're two cis white hetero males, so we're really not supposed to talk about anything.
We're at the very bottom of the intersectional chart.
Oh yeah,
like in the corner. I feel, and that to me, because I agree with you. Like, actually, what I'm saying, I feel like is pretty compassionate, which is that maybe we should just instruct society through action that there are more than two genders. But that everything gravitates towards kind of like the A and B, or the 0 and 1. So like we have trans women and we have people kind of women on and they're on a spectrum, and males on a spectrum, and some people that are non-binary and all. It's like, I don't care about any of that. That's fine. Right. I'm just asking you to not tell me that I need to pretend, because I'm not going to. Right? Like, at some point we have to at least. I'm going to treat you with respect. I'm going to treat you with love. I'll treat you no differently than anyone else. And I think you should be able to do whatever you want. If that's not good enough for you, I don't know what to say about that. But that's a lot more than a lot of people would. That's a lot more charitable than a lot of people treat me. I'll tell you that much. And I just feel like, again, it goes back to what affects another person and what doesn't. And I feel like with the trans, I don't even know how we got on this conversation, although I'm fascinated by it. I think because I listen to a lot of stuff about it. But
me too.
But it's just kind of like it's like the du jour right now. But I feel like in such a way that people are well, actually, I remember what it was. It was 2022 and 2024. And I feel like a lot of these things are going to start imploding because people are being pushed too far, right? Like they're saying to themselves, and I think they're being honest. This was the through line. I remember now. I'm not homophobic. I'm not transphobic. I'm not racist. I don't treat anyone differently. I raise my kids. I don't have kids, but I'm just speaking royally. I raise my children with respect. They go to school and we go to church or whatever the case might be. Why are you just bearing down on us as if we are criminal in some way, right? Like, for instance, white guilt and the entire idea of slavery and all of that. Well, it's mixed up in such a way that like my family had nothing to do with that.
Right.
Like why? But even if we did, it would be like going to Germany and holding everyone to account there because their grandfathers and great-grandfathers were Nazis. Right? And I just don't think that that's a very productive way to move forward. And in Germany, they have a lot of culpability in what happened and a lot of deniability, and they don't teach it and they don't talk about it, and it's illegal to bring up Nazism and all of that kind of stuff. And I actually think that's also dangerous because then it allows people to kind of forget about the things that have already happened. So we should be teaching people about the racist past of the United States. Absolutely. It is very complicated. Howard Zinn is my favorite historian, right? He's the one that kind of shook everyone awake in the 90s about a lot of this stuff. Of course, Gordon Wood and others as well. And I look at it and I just think, shouldn't we just try to progress? Shouldn't we say, this happened, it was fucked up that this happened. It has a series of horrifying ramifications. The South never even economically recovered until after World War II. The people live in destitution. There are institutional racist legacies all over the place. Sure. I don't, but why are little kids being taught everything through this lens?
Right.
It's fucking weird. It's not
Why
right. It's just because you're not giving them a chance to be different. You're not giving them a chance to it's nature versus nurture. They didn't come out of the womb like that, right? Like, so give them a chance. Present them with modernity. Present them with choice and option. And it happens over and over again, right? I grew up in a pretty diverse place, and I didn't really think twice about having a black friend or an Hispanic friend or whatever. I feel like that stuff you only become cognizant of that when you hear other people, older people, talking about it, or you hear it on TV or whatever the case might be, or on the radio. So give them a chance, man.
Right.
Give them a chance.
Right. Teach kids history. That's really, teach everyone history. History is riddled with good and bad, right? I mean, people should know about the Holocaust. People should know about slavery. People should know about the Civil War and about all these different events and yes, and about the structural, I'm personally deeply against the war on drugs, and I think that that perpetuates racism and structural racism, or whatever you want to call it, and because and I would say classism. I think it most negatively impacts the lower classes, and so that's something we can talk about. That's something we can debate how we can change the laws that affect. But when you just start talking about like whiteness as inherently fragile, or the white supremacy that's in all of us, I think it really just it not only is not true, but it turns people against this shit. Like I swear to God, it has a backfiring effect. That people don't realize how dangerous this could be. I think it's probably not. I think more than anything, you're probably right. There's going to be a reckoning of some kind. It's not going to be like everyone white suddenly starts becoming actual racists.
No.
But they're going to get fed up with people who talk about this shit like from on high. Like, oh, you unclean masses, you must read our books about anti-racism and reform. And I was
read Robin DiAngelo and educate yourself.
Yeah, then hire her for your company anti-racism weekend, so you can learn all about how your skin color is bad. And that'll fix racism.
Yeah, the immutable characteristic that you have nothing to do with, and we're just born into this world. Now you have to wear that like an albatross around your neck, just like the people in the past had to wear it around their albatross. So it's just generational crime, basically. It's great, isn't it? And then we can just do this onto generation after generation and just saddle them. And that's what I was saying. Like the reaction. A lot of people are totally normal. It's what I said earlier. They want prosperity. They want peace. They want family and friends. They want, a safe town, whatever the case might be. But when you start asking them to bend truth, they're going to react and you're going to see it. And I've said, God, I fucking said it ad nauseum. It is class that is the issue. It is not race. It is not gender. It is not any of those things that are immutable. It is class. It is. I'm screaming into the microphone.
It is class.
It's class. It's money. And it's until people don't understand. Because, Eric, Donald Trump got more of the minority vote than any Republican candidate in history. I just told you about the Monmouth polling about voter ID, which is supposed to protect minority voters, in which 81% of minority voters want voter ID. You're just seeing a dissonance between reality and what people are telling you is reality. And that is only going to be able to come to a head at the ballot box. And it's going to, and it's not going to be people reacting like fascists. It's going to be a right-wing populist that is going to say, that is wisely going to sound a lot like Bernie Sanders and a lot like Donald Trump, and just say like, oh, yeah, we probably should have an immigration policy. You're right. Oh, yeah, this conversation about gender and sex is a little more convoluted than this. Yeah, defund the police. That doesn't sound like a very good idea. That's all you're going to need, right? Because otherwise, all the policies are set. I think we're on the course towards Medicare for all. I think we're on the course towards a more reasonable immigration policy. We are on an anti-war course. All of these things are kind of in play with inertia right now. You just need someone like a figurehead to say like, no, you're not crazy. This shit doesn't make any sense. And people are lying to you. And there's some sort of game they're playing with you. And they want to pit everyone against each other when we are amongst the most accepting, kindest generations in the history of humankind. You know, if you were born gay, if you were born gay in Saudi Arabia right now, you're not going to be in good shape. But if you were born gay in the United States 100 years ago, you better keep that to yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
oh, yeah.
if you have something, if you're a white man who has an eye for a black woman in the South in 1920, you better not tell anyone, because that's real danger. Yeah. And we've come, and that is horrible, and people should learn about it. It happened. Yeah. Right? I was glad that people were talking about the Tulsa race riots recently, which no one ever talks about. And all the things that have happened over in Baltimore in the 60s and everything that has happened. It's fucking horrible.
Yep.
But we don't have to live in that space forever.
Right.
And I don't get why we don't have a more affirmative and positive message from someone saying like, we should learn about the past, but it is the past. You don't have to tell me about it. I studied American history in college. Like I love history. But why don't we just give ourselves a chance to live a different way?
Yeah.
A way where it's okay to say a woman and a trans woman are different, but they should be treated exactly the same. It's okay to tell a black kid and a white kid they don't have to worry about their skin color. They should just be friends and don't worry about that. You know, like it doesn't matter. It's actually great that you have no idea how great it is. It's great that you don't know that you're holding a white and a black kid are holding hands, and that would have never happened 50 years ago. That's great. So maybe we should instill that in our children so that they put that onto theirs, and so on and so forth. And that's what I want.
Yeah.
By the way, if that's controversial, everything I've said is that if anything I've said is controversial, then I think you live in another world.
I agree.
And
I think, as to your point of like a populist in the vein of like Bernie Sanders, but on the right. Well, people misunderstand just how conservative a lot of minority communities are. You know, black communities and Hispanic communities are not. You know how many. You hear the phrase Latinx a lot now. Yeah. But how many actual Latin people use that phrase?
No, almost none.
I would say that it's almost none, and I think a lot of them are offended by it. Partly because it's offensive to the Spanish language. Right.
It's rewriting their language, which is a gendered language.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with the gendered language. I still can't understand no one has actually put into words why that's a bad thing. Like, is there something worse about the female gender so that, like, Latina is worse than Latino, and so we have to say Latinx instead? Like, why?
I think it's also to encompass, like, people that don't identify as either. And it's like, you can't, it's 0.3% of the population is transgender, apparently. Like, you can't, so we should respect them. The smallest minority is the individual. So the smallest minority should be protected. There's no doubt about that. Absolutely. And Thomas Jefferson would agree with that. Like that's totally congruent with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And I agree with that. But you can't also just rewrite language in order to cater to a very small group of people, amongst whom I don't think many of them even want to do this. So
I think a lot of them probably don't want all the extra attention
Right.
that all of this is bringing down on their heads. Like,
Right.
Just let us live our lives and just treat us with respect, and you don't have to actually rewrite the whole, a whole language to accommodate
ancient
us.
language, an
Because
ancient
we
Romance
don't
language.
want to be responsible for that, because that's going to piss people off. And you know what? I feel like there's a lot of sort of sacrificial lamb stuff going on with people's lives in these activist circles. Not everyone wants to be involved. And, I think that's the problem you see with activism a lot of the time, is that it gets ahead of itself, and I think it puts people in the crosshairs when they just want to be left alone. And, whatever the cause might be. But yeah, it's, I think, and I think with all these communities, I think, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, most people do not enjoy this kind of politics. Woke politics, whatever. It's just not the politics of a normal human being. It's not what people worry about. People worry about putting food on the table. They worry about leading satisfying lives. They worry about their relationships and their kids. And, while some of these things probably do bring a little bit more equality or safety or whatever, a lot of them, I think, they're not what people are voting about. They're not what people want to. I mean, I know there are people. I read this article about women paying like $2,500 a plate to have this this dinner where they learn all about white supremacy and anti-racism. And these, it's a black chick and an Indian chick are running this dinner, and all these, white women come in and are educated for $2,500 a head. And I'm like, wow, that is a hustle right there.
I mean,
that is a hell of a racket, man.
Yeah, get it if it's there. I mean, do you?
It's crazy, though.
It's nonsense. And I just feel like a populist message, an anti-war message, all that stuff is going to be really popular with either side. So it's the person who first gets to the populist economic message and says, yeah, those motherfuckers are crazy. And I think when someone says that, everyone's going to get up and start clapping. I really do feel like when someone is bold enough, like a mainstream figure is bold enough, you almost saw it with Jon Stewart when he was on Colbert and he was talking about COVID last week or whatever, where you saw like a really seismic shift and like, whoa, everyone was kind of looking around like, is it okay? Jon Stewart is saying it's okay. And I feel like you're going to need a political figure like that to say like, no, these motherfuckers are nuts. Yeah. And we shouldn't live in this racial society like this. It's neo-racism.
Right.
And I really feel like when someone stands up and says it and they say, listen, the rich are your enemy. We're going to even things out with the economy. Everyone's going to pay their fair share in taxes. We're not going to separate ourselves by race and gender and all this shit. We're not rewriting the English language. We're not going to fight foreign wars and drop bombs on people. You're going to get 65% of the vote.
Oh yeah.
It's just like, totally. It's just going to take someone to say it. Because I think people just need to look around and say like, is it okay? Are we allowed to say that it's absolutely insane that we're being asked to pretend that this is all normal?
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, and when it happens, we'll see. I think there's also going to be some lawsuits, especially with the trans issues. I think we're going to see some lawsuits, other things that kind of even that shit out a little bit and bring a little sanity to that. But yeah, there'll be some other crazy shit that happens later. And these things come in it's cyclical, right? Like just when you start to get back on track, some other crazy shit comes up, and you're like, wait, okay, we're doing this again? Like really, like. Yeah, but I mean, I like your optimism in that regard, though. I think it really could. It really could happen. I think Trump was the wrong guy for that because he was too divisive.
Yeah,
I think,
he's too much.
He's too much. Sanders, I really like Sanders, but also probably maybe too old and too. I don't know.
He's too far to the left, but you'll notice that he's anti-woke. He definitely is. I don't think people give him enough credit for that because some people came after me about saying something like that recently, and I'm like, you're really confused if you think that Bernie Sanders and the Squad, for instance, are aligned on this stuff. They're not.
Well, why do you think
Bernie Sanders is pro-gun and all this shit.
There's a reason there were Hillary supporters who are a lot of woke people in the Hillary camp. They came up with the Bernie Bros thing to smear supporters of Bernie Sanders because he's not woke. I mean, that's literally and because they wanted Hillary to win, but that's just the truth. Yeah, he's not insane on guns. He's not. I mean, he really is a pretty level-headed guy as far as they come. But yeah, I think you get a populist who's younger and just can hold it together a little more and not be quite so batshit as a Trump, and not quite so what's the word, unpredictable, I guess. And just, but although I think that some of Trump's appeal was his ability to just sort of like say anything, talk shit to anyone, just go out there and surprise everybody. I think that people they found that appealing because it wasn't like these stuffy politicians who have everything planned out so perfectly, But yeah, if you can harness that, but also not always say terrible things about people, maybe, I don't know. Also, the self-pity, I don't think, was a really great look for Trump.
No, he's the wrong... I don't think you need a real... I mean, it goes back to John McCain calling himself a maverick, but I don't think you really need a maverick-like character in the presidency. You need a staid, steady, and predictable person that has a policy and people around him that he can trust. You can't have chaos. It was very entertaining to watch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it was not clearly effective. I know that a lot of it wasn't effective because everyone was against him from the beginning, but what they don't understand is that you just take Donald Trump, you dress it up in a little bit of a nicer words and better words, better vocabulary, and you remove the craziness and the bravado, and most people agree with it. So that's all you need. You don't necessarily need that. I actually have been keeping an eye on that guy, Rick DeSantis or whatever, Ron DeSantis in Florida, the governor down there, who I think is going to run for president if Trump doesn't, and I think he might be the guy that is going to take on the tech companies, take on the oligarchies and the monopolies, say like it is on all of these social issues, and respect people's individual rights. But as I said on Twitter a few days ago, if it comes from the left and someone is like, listen, I'm completely anti-woke and I'm for Medicare for all, I'll be like, okay, fine. Yeah. As long as you obliterate this wokeness, then I'll take that deal. I'll take it. I'll take that deal every time.
Yeah. Totally. So we'll see, though. It'll be interesting to see. Well, cool. I think we've gone about 2 hours, so cool, that's probably a good spot to wrap it up. It was really fun, wide-ranging, and only mildly controversial. Whatever. Cool. Well, thanks for. Do you want to give yourself a plug?
Yeah, you can just find me on Twitter. I'm at No Taxation, and I run Last Stand Media on Patreon. Bunch of gaming podcasts, but you can find me if you want. No big deal. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, take care.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you.